really good. I've done individual videos and podcasts with both of you, and we've gotten some good feedback. And then we did one together about toxic relationships, and we covered so much ground that we kind of all agreed doing one of these every so often, a little more specific with a little more focus on it would do everybody some good. And the topic that kind of surfaced this time was regret. So before I turn it over to you two, and I'm going to let you both do what you did last time and give everybody a thumbnail sketch of, because new people may be watching, what your background is and what you do. I want to say that living in regret, when I posted this event, not just looking back on relationships that may be broken or have gone away, but we have regret in current relationships. So this isn't just for people who are looking back on the relationships that are no more. Even inside a relationship, I think we all secretly, quietly, and it builds like a little nodule of just dead cells, these regrets, things I didn't say, things that I wish I had said. I wish I were different. I wish they were different. So the topic of regret, I think, is pretty broad, and it's more than just looking backwards on relationships. Am I right, ladies?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, there's my contribution to this whole thing.
Yeah.
So I hope everybody enjoyed it. I'm out. All right, we'll start with you, Karen McMahon. Tell everybody what you do quickly, after that, Judy, just pick it up and tell everybody what you do, and we'll start the conversation.
Awesome. So Karen McMahon, Journey Beyond Divorce is my company, and we're a team of divorce coaches and relationship coaches. So we help people either mend a relationship or support them through ending it. And so with the divorce piece, we support people through both the emotional storm and the practicalities of moving through a process that feels very much like a foreign land to them. And we have the Journey Beyond Divorce podcast, which is got close to 60 shows, and lots of people download and listen to that. And that has all that same information on the emotional and practical journey, and just the information and support people need to go through it.
All right, Judy.
I am Judy Herman. I'm an author and counselor who helps and works with other mental health therapists and leaders, business owners, people who are soul searching in their calling to do what they do, and I help empower them to help their clients. And at the moment, I'm actually in huge transition. My book is called Beyond Messy Relationships, Divine Invitations to Your Authentic Self. I'm actually a client to my own book. It's a combination of memoir, which most mental health therapists do not write their memoirs, but I did mine. And I also show up as a therapist at the beginning of each of the chapters. And a lot of people tell me, Judy, I feel like I'm getting therapy from you and I'm not paying you for it. So it's therapy in a box, although I don't advertise because that would go against my ethics and legal obligations as a counselor. It's a book. And there you have it. And I'm very excited about it. But yes, that's what I do. I'm a mental health therapist, and I also specialize in relationships. And at this stage of my life, I am helping other therapists and nurturing and helping others with their self-care so that they can be their best and authentic selves.
You know, I said it last video, I'll say it this video because I want to be transparent. I met both of these ladies 4 years ago, and I remember it well because, you know, as a guy's guy, I cry for my kids. I cry at the death of people I love. I get teary, and I'm a very romantic person. I'm okay with having emotions, but I don't cry a bunch over stuff for me. And yes, I've cried in front of both these ladies. I've used Kleenex and tissue, and that's how I got to know them both, because they each did their thing, helping me get through some transitions in my life. So before we talk about regret, you know, Judy, you said you'd written a book, and Karen, I know you're putting a lot of content out there with the 12 steps and podcast. Do you either one, because, and I asked this knowing the answer, but I want your take on it. Do you either one ever listen to your podcast, read some of your content, read part of your books, and shake your head and go, if people knew how much I struggled with that, oh my gosh. Or you look at it going, man, I forgot. I really should be doing more of that. Has it ever helped you as much as other people?
It's funny that you asked that. I would say with the 12-step program, me and my business partner who put it together, whenever we listen to it, I'm like, oh my God, I really needed that today. Like, I still struggle with all of it because it's just a journey. And what I think is interesting with probably books like yours, Judy, and our programs is often they're so robust, like the self-help books that I read are so robust that if I go back and I listen or read a second time, I hear something new because I'm at a new place. And so with really good content that's robust, you're gonna read or listen a second or third time, and it's gonna meet you where you're at. And so if you've grown, like a lot of times I'll listen and go, I don't even remember hearing that the first time because I wasn't ready for it. So I would say that our content absolutely helps us. And I'm a hot mess like everybody else. I'm just doing the work too and sharing my lessons.
I so resonate, and I do have a story about this because my book, it was published, well, the copyright date is 2020, but the print version came out in September of 2019. So books that are published in the fall, they have their copyright date the following year. Little did I know how applicable my book was, not just because all of us now are going through the COVID and the pandemic. And what I wrote about, there's some principles that are really key and core. So little did I know when I was writing the book what an impact the book would be making at such a time as this. Secondly, the timing of writing a book, and some authors may do it all at once. They have the Kindle version, the print version, and the audio version all at once. Well, mine's been a step-by-step process. The audiobook was being produced really at the beginning of this year, or kind of like in the spring. The timing of that, there were so many ebbs and flows with that, but it was coming at a time in which I needed to hear the message. I needed to listen as I was listening and editing and reliving it. It was really powerful. The principles that were there that I wasn't quite as in tune with how universal they were, especially for this stage of my life, and then for others as well. So It was a really pretty profound experience, the timing of the audiobook production.
Well, I do a radio show about business and marketing and all that. I've done it for 8 years, and I think I counted up a while back. Last 10 years, I've probably done 250 to 300 seminars. And it's amazing on how many times I've listened to stuff about business, knowing I'm a small business owner, going, if they only knew, I don't do that at all. I suck so bad at that one right there. I hope nobody has a follow-up question. Well, Mr. Powell, how do you handle that? Oh, I don't. I just stick my head in the sand and hope it goes away. Let's talk about you, though. So it's basically my same approach as to mental health. So you two can help me out. So let's jump into regret. So when we were talking about the topic of regret, I did a little research, a little read, not tons, but just enough, because I think I have enough personal anecdotal stories about regret that I can use that as my frame of reference. But it's important, I think, to understand that there are different types of regret, right? This is Clint throwing this question out there because I look back on the things that I live with, and I said it a little bit at the beginning, but I regret a lot of things that I said out of anger to my ex or to my kids or to my friends. I regret a lot of things that I didn't say. I regret this is a big one. I regret not setting boundaries earlier in relationships. I'm looking back on things now that I feel guilty about. And what's weird about it is the guilt and the regret kind of combine to form this new emotion that I don't know what you call it, but I feel guilty for things I didn't do. And so I regret not saying, hey, that's not my fault. I regret not traveling more with her. I regret doing things. So when I throw this out there, and I don't care who takes it, the different types of regret that we can encounter or that you've encountered with your clients, let's identify a few of those so people that watch this can go, oh, that one's mine, or I have that one.
First of all, I got to address that regret is not a standalone thing, is it, Clint? like just what you got done saying, that, okay, I had guilt about this. And so regret is really it's like a yucky feeling in our gut, right? None of us really want to feel it. So what do we do with that? What I know, I may be deviating from your question, what kind of regrets? Yes, there's all kinds of regrets. There's all kinds. Like last year, I traveled a lot. I spent more money than I should have traveling. And I regretted that at the end of the year. But you know what? With COVID going on right now, I sure am glad I took all those trips because I've been stuck at home. So I think the point being is that we have limited perspective. And what we regret in the past, we may be thankful in the future. It's kind of like are you familiar with Brad Paisley's song about writing a letter to his 17-year-old self? Yeah. I think that speaks volumes, right? Our regrets are, they may.
Yeah. Karen, do you find people get stuck in different places on that?
Yeah, I think that, there's the should've, could've, would've, and I think that there are, I don't know, different kinds of regrets, but they're the big ones. And certainly in my field, I'll have people saying, I should have left sooner, or I never should have left. And so big decisions involve big regrets or big mistakes. It could feel like just a huge regret.
I think maybe I asked the question wrong too, because but I think a lot of people, the regret combines with other emotions. And I tried to say it a little bit with guilt. Sometimes I don't know if we can identify where the regrets are at. In other words, I feel guilty a lot of times because I didn't do some things in my marriage that I know I should have done. And I don't care how much more of a healthy person I become, those still linger. In other words, I still feel bad about some things. I still wish it could have worked out, even though I'm probably a better person for it. She's probably a better person for it. The kids have gone past, they've gotten through it, but it doesn't mean I wish it had turned out differently. And it combines with regret with this. I wish it had turned out differently. I feel guilty. I don't know. I think regret's almost a seasoning that goes on all the other emotions.
Well, and I think that's what Judy was saying, is that it's intertwined. You could have shame, you can have guilt. Like there's a lot you could have unforgiveness. There's so many things that regret has tentacles that it touches. And I think the one thing we could agree to is we all feel regret. It makes sense. It makes sense that we're going to make mistakes. It makes sense that I don't think any of us ever say, I want to make this decision that's going to screw me up or that's going to have a bad outcome. Like we come from good intention, and yet there may be a level of consciousness that we can bring to it. So I think that there are different, as I was saying, there's different levels based on the significance of it. And again, when you look at leaving your marriage, for instance, regretting not leaving sooner or regretting that you left at all, those are very big, and working through those have a lot more tentacles.
So when people sit in front of you, Judy, and they say, I wish I'd have said this, I wish I'd have done that, I wish I'd have stayed, wish I'd have gone, whatever their wish is, what are some things people can do? What are some words they can say? Are there habits? How do we give people some practical things to work through it? Because it's easy for this to stick around.
Yes. Here's what I've recently said to a client, which I think I need to put in a future book. All these I would have, I could have, I should have, woulda, coulda, shouldas, treat those as if they are cuss words. So instead, you're going to say, since I said this or that, whatever's lingering on, to me, I know this, hope I'm staying on target here. This is an invitation, whatever regret we're feeling, whatever, rumination we're doing, it's actually an invitation to do something. Okay. So if there's some guilt about what we said, or yelling at our kids or our spouse or this or that, it's time then to write a letter. Now, whether you ever send that letter to the other person, that's, we'll do more, work on that, on whether that should be done or not. But write a letter to get it out of you, and apologize. Do what you need to do. Make restitution. And it's good to do that with people that are emotionally safe in your life and your family members that you live with. for sure. Just say, you know, and be honest. I mean, people who tell me I don't have any regrets, you know what? I kind of like don't trust that.
Well, I love the idea. I love the idea of writing yourself a letter, even if you don't send it or not, saying, I wish I had done this. I'm sorry for that. Because sometimes the letter you might need to have one for whoever you're writing it to, but you also may need to have one to yourself. You may need to write a letter to yourself. Dear me.
And I went to a therapist one time. Well, not one time. I've been to therapist many times. I think it was my therapist or one of my colleagues.
Wow, I want that therapist. They nailed it in one time. We're out of business.
No, I do. I mean, therapists need their own therapy, right? I mean, don't ever go to a therapist that's not gotten their own therapy. But what I heard was a really powerful illustration. And I was looking at my life at this stage that I was at. And I was saying I woulda, shoulda, coulda. Well, if I look back on my timeline, let's just say at the age of 20, imagine having a very low-powered battery flashlight and you're going through the woods and it's really dark and you're trying to find your way and you're walking in the light with which you had at that stage in your life. Well, then you get, you know, a little bit older, you get more aware, and then you're looking back, but see, you're judging your younger self based upon where you are now and so as you go through your life, think of it as okay, now I've got a floodlight at this stage, or maybe by the time I'm 90 something, it'll be like, okay, it's sunshine in an open field. So we need to have grace for ourselves, self-compassion, and also developmentally where we were at that stage of life. You walk in the light with what you have. I think it goes along with what Karen said. We're not intentionally doing stuff to make us feel bad and regret.
Well, and we're going to talk a little bit in a minute about habits, because I believe that contributes a lot to how we move through stuff. But Karen, when people come to you and they say things like, because you both get people in an emotional state and they're saying, I wish they would have, I wish I would have, I regret, I'm sorry. How do you handle, what are some words you use, or how do you approach those when they're in that state?
You know, one of the things, and I recently had a new client who came to me with such regret, how many years, I don't know, maybe 8 years post-divorce, and such incredible regret that it was debilitating her ability to thrive in her life. And one of that, a text message this morning from a new client who's in deep regret over something that happened in the last few days. And the first thing that I typically do is certainly validate it. It's like, whatever it is, it's an emotion that's real. And now let's start taking a look at the story behind it. And the story behind regret is almost always, if I had taken my wife traveling more, we would still be together. If I had done that thing differently, it would have turned out better. And so there's something very interesting. Fear is always what if something negative, right? We don't what if I have a lot of money, I meet a great guy, I like thrive. We don't what if that way. We what if from a fear place. And then regret is the opposite. Regret is, had I done it differently, the outcome would have been beautiful. The outcome would have been exactly what I wanted. And with this client last month, we started poking around at her story, that had she known sooner, everything would have been different. And when we started poking at it, that was one possibility, but there were 100 other possibilities. And simply realizing that she was so attached to the fact that she had made a bad decision, and had she not, life would have unfolded so lovely. When she was able to see that's not true, it, like, the regret melted away. It's like, I did the best I could, and that's what we did. I love your flashlight thing. I had a low energy flashlight, and now 10 years later I have a high energy flashlight. I see things differently, but I saw them the way I saw them, and that changed everything for her.
You know what's really a theme I'm starting to get from all of our individual conversations and the ones we've had together is what we usually play out in our mind very rarely is true. Whether it's this had happened, if I'd have done this, it would have been different. Or, you know, when you're going through it, and we talked last time about the worst case scenario is I'm never going to be loved again. They did this because they love someone else more than me. And another one that I've talked to somebody the other day about is, and this is a weird one. I want y'all to pin this, what I'm about to say. We'll do a conversation. We'll do another podcast, because this other person said it almost feels like the relationship they had for 15 years was not real. And it was a fake relationship. And I thought, and I was trying to give advice, and I said, that's just not true. You know, it was real. You have children, you have these memories. It changed, but we start telling ourselves everything is fake. And I say all that to say, when we're talking specifically about regret, I think it's important to realize our mind will play tricks on us.
Our mind will lie to us, not play tricks on us. Our mind will lie to us on a daily basis. And if you pay attention to what your ego mind says and you track it, you will see it's wrong 90% of the time. And still, we always listen to it.
Judy, don't you see, though, people come in and regret affects their self-esteem. It affects their ability to love. And I don't know if the word forgiving ourselves is part of regret. It's almost like we sinned against ourselves and we just don't let it go. How do people learn to let that go? How do I work through that? I want to forgive myself, but damn it, I could have done better, you know?
Yes, and every one of us could have done better, right? Every one of us can. So I think it is a matter of getting out of this present moment. And I'll go back to the acronym that I talk about and write about and counsel about, is breathing in fresh air, awareness, intentionality, and risk. So when you breathe in, and this is a meditation practice, of which meditation is like a really good thing, especially if you've got a guided meditation in your head that's telling you to, okay, pay attention to the breath and realize you're in this present moment. Regret takes us to the past. Regret takes it, and it doesn't serve us. And it's kind of like standing in the middle of a stream, and that water is flowing in between our legs, you know, a shallow stream. So we can focus so much on the past, we're going to miss out on this present moment. We miss out on our lives, or we can be so worried about upstream, all this stuff that's coming. So meditation is a really good practice in order to handle those, what we call ruminating thoughts, ruminating regrets, and ruminating negativity on the woulda, coulda, shoulda, or the unlived life. Is going to take you out of your life. It's going to be seeds of depression and anxiety. So what we want to do is we want to learn how to live in the present. The reality is that we get so busy, don't we? We get busy with our jobs. We get busy hiding our pain. We don't want to feel it. We might have, you know, with alcohol, drugs, relationships, whatever. Anything can be an addiction that's going to hide that pain. But that pain was never to be stagnant. We're never intended to live in regret. But regret is valuable in that we learn lessons from it. We learn lessons on how to be.
And I think, too, people hear the word meditation, and some people call it prayer time. You can call it quiet time. I think some people have this idea in their head, okay, it's got to be 45 minutes. I've got to hit this stupid hard yoga pose. I've got to have Yanni music on in the background and have a sunset in front of me. And in reality, I challenge everybody, seriously, this is, you think it's easy. Sit 5 minutes with no music, no phone, no noise, and listen. It is hard. Listen and feel your breathing. If you get through 2 minutes without going, this is insane, things are happening, I'm busy, then you're a better man or person than I am. I can do it now, but when I first started trying, 2 minutes was extraordinarily long. So I say all that to say it doesn't take much to start changing the mind.
It really doesn't. And then when you do find your mind focusing on, this is insane, I have so much to do, you take a deep breath. Okay, I'm going to get back to my breath, going to get back to this present moment. Now, I do guide clients in, you know, to help to pay attention to the 5 senses. So listening to your smells. I'm saying listening to the sounds.
You're the best therapist ever. You got people listening to their smells. You're not charging enough. You need to. You're way undervalued.
Wait a minute. I'm not on drugs here. Okay. So.
Me and Karen both are making appointments with you immediately.
Sound like?
I want you to listen to the colors around you.
Well, some people maybe can do that. I don't know, but yes, you're going to tune in to the fragrances, to what you hear, to what you see, to what you feel, to all of that stuff. And just being aware, And again, I think I've made reference to this before. Is you go outside in the middle of the day, which maybe most of us can because we're inside doing our work, right, in front of the screens. Well, take a break and look up. Just look up. Look up at the clouds, the trees, and just smell and say, thank you, God. And that could be a really good meditation.
And it's a great place to start. Somebody that can do 30 minutes, an hour of meditation now started off with 2 minutes or 5 minutes before they got to that point. Karen, when people come to you and you can tell that, because you told a story about somebody who'd been divorced for 8 years. So whether you're in the middle of it or you're in a relationship or you're 8-10 years removed, regrets look different at different places. But when someone talks about trying to get past it because the kids are watching, or I want to be in a relationship again, a lot of times we go back to that self-talk, and when they go, well, that's just who I am. That person that was married 8 years ago that didn't do the things they should have done, I'm still that same person. And how do you help them work through that when it might have been some time since they've been through the relationship?
Yeah, I think that there's one of the words that comes up for me with regret is really resisting what is. And so even as you were talking about these kind of smaller regrets of when I was married, I wished I. And so one thing is, what is that? That's a statement which may have less emotional pull than somebody who's X number of years post-divorce and kind of living under the moldy blanket of regret, let me say, the heaviness, the black hole, the drain of regret. And so I think when you were talking about what kind is there, we can certainly regret something that happened in the past, and it's just a mental thing. God, I wish I did that different. And then there's the person who's like, I'm afraid, I regret everything I did. I'm afraid to make decisions because I made mistakes in the past. And that's where we would talk through, well, how true is it that you're the same person? And it really does come back to how are you perceiving it? So what did you learn? How did you grow? And then it might be like, but I still do these things. Well, then great. Every day you get to wake up and decide if you want to shift them. And so regret and resistance in the work that I do is an invitation. Like nothing's bad. It's all good. So regret and resistance is an invitation to say, are you happy with it? Are you comfortable? Do you want to stay? And if not, let's start poking around and exploring baby steps that you can take, both perspective steps and actions to shift out of that. Does that make sense?
It makes tons of sense. And my next comment or question was going to be something you just touched base on. There are people out there, and a lot of them, and I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose, but they get very comfortable in my regrets and my shame. It becomes the feeding the monster.
Yep.
This is who I am because this is what I did. I'm a victim here. I was a villain here. And then I'm not going to love again. And they never get out of this cycle. And no matter how much you talk to them, you can kind of go, you're saying the same thing now you were saying 6 months ago or 2 years ago. You must be really, really happy where you're at.
Yeah.
I was going to say here, you've mentioned a couple things like people are like, they do fortune telling. I'll never this or I'll never that, right? That's fortune telling. Like, are you, so sometimes when we put labels on things, it really does help. Or like, you're catastrophizing. That's good old cognitive behavioral therapy to be able to identify the phrases that we're taking that are automatically running through our minds that we don't even think to even test or ask if it's true or not.
Yeah, I don't think most people that don't go through therapy don't know that they don't know how much power they have over their mind. I think we tend to say, this is who I am. So what I'm thinking is true. What I'm thinking is just me. I mean, we don't understand that we have the power and I said this earlier, it actually is a habit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got to a point, Karen, after talking with you and Judy, I would have a point where I may not have thought of anything like with my regrets or my shame or my guilt or I may not be in that moment. I would intentionally bring those things up in my mind so I could say, okay, when I feel this way, what am I going to say? When I feel this way, because it's coming, what are some things I'm going to do? I would practice. I would dry run, rehearsal. Is that weird?
Well, it's interesting because I think that Judy said it in your air thing. It's like when a huge part of what I think we both do is raise someone's level of awareness. And so I often meet people, and I'll say this about my own life. I believe that I was emotionally sleepwalking through so much of my life. And when crisis just slammed me like smack between the head, I had no choice but to wake up and start noticing, how was I showing up in the world? How was I thinking? And it gets really fun and complex, because it's like, what beliefs am I walking around with that were my parents, that I don't even believe in, that don't serve me, that I'm carrying on my back? Or what assumptions and interpretations am I engaged with? And never asking those questions means that you're operating on an unconscious level. And what you described, Clint, is, okay, I know this is going to happen. Let me consciously bring it to mind. Let me be intentional, right? Conscious and intentional about how I want to change and move forward. And then, you know what? When I screw up, and this is part of the bigger question, the regret question, when I screw up, can I forgive myself for not being perfect, for trying my best, and for moving forward?
And I don't think you can do that in the heat of the moment of emotions without practice. That's why I say in sports, you practice before you play. So when you start playing, you know how you're supposed to react. And I think when I talk with you, doing it myself, I can bring it up without the emotions. I can practice the things I'm going to say. What am I going to do at that moment? Then when the game starts, and I know the emotions are going to be in the game, it's muscle memory. I know I can do this. It's not good. And real quick, I don't want to interrupt the flow, but Judy, we had talked about a 30-minute timeline. We're past that. Are you okay?
I'm okay. I can stay on.
Okay.
I can stay on.
I just didn't want you guys, because I know how you both make a living, and I don't want to get in the good life. I can't have y'all start invoicing me for these conversations. I just can't do it.
That might be a good idea, though.
Yeah, well, then it'll be just down. I'll have to find 2 new therapists that aren't going to be near as good. Me, Bob, and Tom will give our advice. Terrible advice.
Fine.
But so I tried to dry run and rehearsal, dress rehearsal some of those conversations. But Judy, I know people have sat in front of you, and that's kind of what you do with people a lot of times, isn't it? Don't you walk through with them when they're not in the moment?
Yeah, I do walk them when they're not in the moment. And here's the thing. If we look at, what I try to do is I try to help people change their paradigm, change their perspective. If we look at our regrets as an invitation for growth, or if we look at our regrets as oh, we're now increasing our awareness. I love what you said, Karen, because yes, saying that you walked around pretty much in an unconscious state of being. That's the danger, right? In our lives, is that our relationships can be habits, our day-to-day routine are habits, the people that, our kids are habits. So we need to bust through that and live in the moment, live fully, live vibrantly, live our authentic selves. So if we see regret as an invitation for, where was I asleep before? I'm really awake now because this has really risen up in me. So you can define what your values are in life. You can you can just live more fully, more consciously, rather than going around reacting. And in your reptilian brain, you can have some conscious choices. And so every one of our regrets are an opportunity for that, not to be stuck in them and not even to get past them, but rather let it be a launch pad for our own growth and awareness.
I'll tell you one of the things that you both helped me with, and I love some of the ideas we've said today, but I look back on our conversations over the last few years, writing the letter to yourself, talking with you, going through stuff, and Karen, you asking people to question, how real is this? One of the things that I've learned, and I'm big on analogies, if I were to do this right here, you can't really tell what that is, right? But the further I get back
Mm-hmm.
and I can see it, I can analyze it. And one of the things that I have found is talking with people like you, or writing my letter, or learning to ask the questions, takes the emotion from right here and puts it more out where I can actually examine it. And it's not as emotional for me. And I think we sometimes just forget that in the moment I'm feeling the regret, we talked about last time, it's going to come as a wave. It's going to go. But how do I examine that? How do I look at it? I don't think we know the questions to ask. And that's why I'm glad you both have told us some questions we should be asking. No one taught us. They didn't come with a self-help book. Oh, you're 18. Here's how to take care of your crap as you go through life. Here's the manual. And when people come to you with regrets, I think you both have to use kind of kids' gloves at first, or do you? That's the question.
And I think that part of it is even that first question of how is that regret impacting you? Like this one client I talked to, she wasn't really thinking about that. She said she regretted, but when she started listening, and what else? And what else does that regret do? And where else does it keep you stuck? And then there's this list of, I am holding on to this anchor. Okay, now I see the value or lack of value it's bringing to my life. That's really important, to be able to get crystal clear on a behavior that you have. Regret right now is what we're talking about. What power is it having over your life? It's pulling me down. It's raising me up. What is it doing? Once you're clear on what it's doing, then it's like, how's that working for you? Do you want to hold on to that? And not tongue in cheek at all. Like, how is that for you? And then having them describe the impact it's having. Now they're ready. Now you're ready to say, I want to let go of it. I truly, Karen, I don't know how.
Don't you think? Well, that's the question I was going to ask. So when they say, I don't know how, and I'm a big believer on journaling, writing it down and looking back. But when they ask the how question, is that different with each person?
I think I would say it is, because you could have one person, a client comes to mind, who was raised in a household where forgiveness was non-existent. It was just a very unforgiving household. It was a cultural thing. And so her regret, it was actually more the unforgiveness that we had to tease apart what causes her to hold on to unforgiveness, and what would it be like if she could forgive herself, this person, that person. So with her, it was that. With the woman that reached out to me this morning, she's actually resisting grief. It's actually really different. Her regret is actually so connected to the stage of grief she's in, and she's judging it. And so we have issues of judgment and grief wrapped up in her regret. So I would say that we started this way, Judy, right? Like there's so many tentacles to regret. So depending on what the regret is and what that person's underlying tendencies or unconsciousness is, we're gonna come at it from different angles, or at least that's how I approach it.
I do need to address this, because I think too, this is awesome, Karen. Clint, you're asking, well, we don't know what questions to ask. Actually, in chapter 11 of my book, I have a set of questions. I have a set of questions to ponder as we examine the pictures of our souls. And so as we look, we can go in our, see the photos that we've taken over the years. Well, I guess we now do it on our computers, but you might have a box of photos of when you were a little kid. You can go back and you can look and, oh, I've really grown. I don't look like this anymore. And you can see physically how you have changed. So these questions that I have in my book are things like, they're questions to ponder that you can also journal about. And then it's going to give you a picture, just as your physical photos will give you a picture. So one of those is like, do you feel more loved than you did a year ago? Or what poor habits have you conquered over the last 10 years or 5 years or year? You can kind of change whatever years. What reference points have changed the direction of your life? See, you can do this. It's great to do it with a coach or a therapist, But there are questions in my book there, Clint.
Well, and I think the first step is helping people feel the power to ask the questions, because we feel so, when we come to people seeking help, a lot of times we feel like we have no power. There's no control. This is, and I'm trying to put this in a way to where it doesn't sound, because I want people, when they hear this, there's tons of hope out there, but it does change you. Relationships, whether it's the healing part and you're in a relationship and it's changed a little bit, or you've broken relationships change you. And it doesn't mean it's bad, but it does mean you have to get different. You have to get used with it being different now. And looking back on relationships with regret, I think this is what I've been waiting to say. I think regrets are okay. I think regrets are part of it. I don't want to stop thinking about my regrets. I don't want to focus on them. I don't want them to be the majority of my life. But for me, regrets a lot of times, and I want to make sure they're real regrets. Again, I'm not accepting blame for something I didn't do. I just had been, mentally just beat down. And I'm not talking about that. But I think regrets are like hot stove tops. For me, it helps set boundaries, because a lot of the stuff that I regret after I got further from the relationship were things that I didn't control, boundaries I didn't set, things I didn't say that I should have, love that I didn't show, too much leniency over here. So now they are these hot tops of these stoves that I don't want to lose.
Right. And if I could jump in, what I think is so great.
Please jump in. That's why you're here. For the love of God, jump in. No one gives a damn what I think. Please.
Actually, I thought what you just said was perfect, because the first question, like if a coach or a therapist goes in and says, well, we have to get rid of that regret before we understand the value of it. So in your case, you're saying the regrets that I'm holding on to are like hot stovetops. They're reminders, they're beacons, they're things that help me be a better man, that remind me a direction. Do they have value? Yeah. Is it positive value? Yeah. Great. We don't have to talk about your regret. That's working for you. If you have a regret that's not working for you, you're addressing it very differently. And so I think that for you, and everyone's different. Someone else might be like, I could never imagine a regret being a good thing because it makes me feel bad. Okay, so then we're going to work on you differently. We're going to help you process it differently.
Yeah. Honestly, I think regrets are things that motivate people to write books, to move to a different level of maybe business. One of my colleagues, and his mother had passed away, and it was, he regretted whatever, thing there in that relationship. She passed away in an untimely way. Well, that has been his launch pad for his ministry, his business, his counseling. So it gives you energy. Regret can give you energy to be unstuck. And if we have no regrets, that's really too bad, because it means you probably are like too comfortable in your life, and you might be unconscious in your life, and you're missing out on your life. Whereas I believe regrets can actually make us live a much bigger, open, powerful life, an abundant life that I believe that God has invited us to.
Karen, did you want to say something?
Yeah,
you look like you did.
I think that it's the bottom line is it's what you do with it. Can I just share a short story? When I was in commercial printing years ago, in the commercial printing business, a lot of people put their hands on things. And I landed this design firm, and she was doing this hedge fund invitation. And it was just such a big deal. It had so much potential, but it was very complex, and it went bad. And I was told by management to lie to the design firm because we were going to fix it and still meet the deadline. And I did, and it blew up, and we didn't meet the deadline. And it was such a horrible thing. And I remember like this visceral nausea. it was horrible. I lost the firm. I looked terrible. I felt terrible about myself. And to your point, Clint, it took some time until I could step away from it and let all of that emotion calm down. And, you know, my lesson was somebody told me to step out of my integrity, and I listened to them. And I don't know that I've ever done that again in my life. Now, did it take me? It took me a long time to be self-forgiving and to get over that. It was an invitation. It was an event. It wasn't the end of the world. But for me, it was enormous for so many reasons. Now, had I not learned from it, Judy, had I just sat and wallowed in the terrible person I was and how I screwed things up, it wouldn't have done anything positive for me. And so I think that regret in and of itself could go either way. And it's getting the support, it's having the perspective, it's choosing to see it as an invitation into growth and awareness and presence that gives it a positive power, or to just let it suck the life out of you. And so it could really go either way. And I would say to the listeners, if you're living in regret, really take a look at the impact it's having on your life, because if it's a negative impact, there are ways of processing through that and using it as fuel to move in the direction that you want to go in.
And I want to add on to that, because I thought, thank you so much, Karen, for sharing that. Like, that is such a beautiful, actually a risk of, you know, that you share this level of vulnerability, which goes then back to my acronym of breathing in the present moment. A, awareness, right? I, intentionality, but here then the risk. And it was a risk for me to write my book. It's a risk for you, you know, for any of us to be authentic with each other, right? And to admit our, you know, our regrets, like those value in regrets, because then to either stay and wallow in it or to go and move into a different realm is then now a level of risk, because, oh, we don't know what this is going to be like, right? So for me to share this, and that was really a journey too, as I wrote my book. It was a huge risk.
The two things I'll say, and we'll wrap it up here in the next few minutes. So I'm going to give you both a heads up now. I'm going to be asking you for, you know, your last take on advice about regret to people. So start putting that in your heads. Two things I'll say is, one, as adults, I think sometimes we assign, I've worked through it, I'm navigating this, I'm becoming healthy, and we think we're going to get to a point where there's 0% sadness over things, there's 0% regret. And I am telling people listening to this, and I have 0 degrees, so take my opinion for what it's worth. I've been through this much training, but I don't think you ever get to a place where a regret, when you look back on it, yes, it can have value, it can be as clean as an emotion it can be. It still may make you sad. That's okay. It doesn't mean, I don't think becoming a healthier person doesn't mean that I'm going to live in this vacuum of all negative emotions. Nothing will make me sad anymore. And I think it's okay to accept that. We have to say, I accept that as part of it. How much of the pie is it going to get? Am I going to give it? The second thing I'll say before I ask you for your advice is, like gold. Gold was assigned value by human beings. Without us assigning value to gold, it means it's a pretty mineral. It's something we find. Everybody's like, oh, look at that. We can make stuff out of it. And then all of a sudden, human beings went, we're going to assign value to that. Same thing with our emotions and regret. When you find it, we assign the value. We give it the value that it has. We can also devalue. We can also take away how much weight we give that. And it is a hard process, but I'm telling you, sometimes we pick up dirt and treat it like it's gold, or we pick up gold and treat it like it's dirt. And I think coming to somebody like a coach or a therapist, like either one of you are, I think that's what helps us figure out which is which and how much power to assign it. Did I give you both? Did I pontificate enough to give you both time?
You pontificated great, Clint.
I'm done. Here we go.
Okay, so I'll leave some closing words about regret. I think you're absolutely right on so many levels. I love being with the two of you, by the way. It's really cool. yes, regret is universal. Do you ever get to a point where you've arrived? No, you're just going to be dealing with regret on a different level, right? And you're going to become more aware. This is the human journey. I want to normalize that regret is part of our humanity. We can choose either to live in it or we can move through it. It is a core belief of mine that we are meant to move throughout life, just like ballroom dancing is what I talk about in my book as well. And also regret is an opportunity to grow and to grow up. So our awareness and our growth and our getting out of regret and moving through it, helping us define our values and not living in an unconscious state in this beautiful life that God has blessed every one of us with. You have a beautiful life and it is so valuable. And so you don't want to waste it with living stuck in regret. But you take regret and you say, this is a gift from God. It's like what Brene Brown calls the gifts of imperfection. This is part of our human journey. And to move through it lets you launch to a different level of being.
Yeah.
All right, Karen.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I had a client who once just was like so frustrated and she was like, just tell me when I'm going to be done with all of this. And I said, I believe that's when we're 6 feet under. And, you know, and one of the sayings that I love, and I think, you know, we've all talked about God is so much more interested in our character than he is in our comfort. And so we're going through.
I don't like that quote. Change that quote, please. Do something. Start over. You got to start over. I'm sorry. Continue on. Yes.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, life is filled with trials and tribulations, regret, and a lot of other difficult emotions a part of it. And I would summarize what we've all said by saying that each time you're triggered, each time you're upset by something, there's an opportunity to either drown in it, get pulled down by it, or to use it as that invitation to look inside and what's going on with me, and am I the person I want to be? And it's a new day, and what can I do differently? And so the biggest thing is it's baby steps. Even if you're in a miserable place right now or a good place, when something happens and you can pick one small thing that you can do, whether it's just in your head, your heart, or an action to move toward the person you want to be, in no time, you really see life unfolding very differently. And so regret is normal. It can be, it can promote you, as Clint said, in a positive way. It could deplete you. And when you know what it's doing, you have the opportunity to poke at it, challenge it, and then make baby steps to move forward out of it.
I had 3 things written down to help summarize everything, but between what you both said, because sometimes we say stuff 20 minutes ago that we forget, but you both said everything I'd written down between the two of you. So there's really no reason for me to say anything else. I love the fact you're trying to normalize it. I love the fact we're supposed to ask it questions and see how we can use it in the future. And I think those are some good steps. I love the fact of getting space and distance and some quiet time and challenging thoughts. I love all that stuff. So it's good stuff about regret. And we need to come up with a couple more topics, because in 2 or 3 weeks, I don't know. Regrets covered a lot of turf. Maybe we talk about the big word. Maybe forgiveness is a good one. Mm-hmm. Forgiveness might be, because and all these have tentacles, but maybe forgiveness is a good one we talk about next. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, or they want to get a hold of your book, how do they find out more about you? And Karen, you're next.
Go to judycounselor.com. That's my website. If you're on Facebook and you're a therapist or a coach and you're listening to this, I have a Vibrantly Authentic Therapist Facebook group. So, ask to be invited to that. And then also, if you're on Facebook and you want to join with me more, it is the, let's see, what did I name? I've got another Facebook group. It just left me, but it's Authentic Relationship Facebook group. I'll put the link in here because I think I messed it up. And then you can get my book through judycounselor.com or anywhere books are sold. And I do have a thing where while in production mode or waiting for the audiobook to come out, you can get a buy one, get one free. And I will give you an author signed copy. All right.
Awesome.
And you can, if you search Journey Beyond Divorce, you'll find our podcast, you'll find our Facebook page. We also have a Journey Beyond Divorce private Facebook community, and our website is jbddivorcesupport.com. We have a divorce survival kit posted right up top, which is a free giveaway, which gives you 5 tips to get you started. So feel free to join us on any of those platforms.
By the way, just for the sake of Karen, I want to honor you. I have listened to a bunch of your podcasts. They are so very valuable. I'm going to link them to my website because so many of my clients are really needing your services. And so anyway, I want to tell you thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Oh, I feel like a matchmaker. I love it.
These conversations are great. I fully enjoy being here with the two of you. You just bring the perfect amount of humor, Clint, to everything.
Well, these are pretty serious topics.
Yeah, and you lighten them nicely.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's a pleasure working with you. I love hearing the psychological understanding of things. Always brings such a rich flavor to the topics we talk about.
Well, thank you very much. And I've sent you wrote an idea down. So we may be in the next couple of weeks doing a little seminar about what it means to be authentic. And I may invite 4 or 5 people on that I know, you two and 2 or 3 others that actually use the word in the name or in their therapies about being authentic. And we might talk about what it means, your journeys to being authentic and what it means. That would be a good topic, because I think a lot of people on this journey that you both walk them through, that's really what they're discovering, who they really are. If you said the same thing, we appreciate it. So we'll do this again in a couple of weeks. And ladies, I hope you have a great day. Thank you for all this time.
Thanks.
Thanks.
See you soon.
Bye, everybody.